You are Barren. How dare you lie to me? I reject you, Vieliantiane. You are not worthy of me. Please don't. She is lying against me. I have no one. Dario, you cannot mean this. Banished. I can't believe he would do this to me, after everything we've been through together. Tell me, little wolf, what will you give me if I give you everything they denied you? I didn't lie to His Majesty. I'm not barren. Then prove it. Valentina Conti knelt at the center of the great hall, and the cold from the stone floor crept up through her knees like it was trying to get into her bones and stay there. Hundreds of wolves stood around her in a circle, close enough that she could hear them breathing, far enough that none of them would reach out a hand to help her up. She knew most of their faces. She had danced with some of them at the harvest fire. She had held bobbies for some of the mothers standing there now with their eyes down. None of that mattered tonight. Tonight she was just a woman on her knees, and they were just a crowd waiting to see what would happen to her. At the far end of the hall sat the throne, carved out of blackened bone and wood so old it didn't look like wood anymore. It looked like something that had grown there on its own, twisting up out of the floor, daring anyone to sit on it who wasn't strong enough to deserve it. And on it sat her mate, Dario Sant'Angelo, Alpha King. Her chest hurt just looking at him, that same old ache, except now there was something sour mixed in with it, something that tasted like fear. He was tall and still, and so far away from her even though he was only 30 feet across the room. This was the man whose hand she used to hold under the dinner table when his mother talked too long. This was the man who once carried her 3 miles on his back when she twisted her ankle chasing fireflies, laughing the whole way, telling her she weighed less than a sack of flour and she didn't believe him, but she let him say it anyway because it felt good to be carried. He would not look at her now. Tonight he didn't look like the man who carried her home. Tonight he looked like a stranger wearing her husband's face, and that was somehow worse than if he'd been a stranger all along. Bring her forward. The voice didn't come from Dario. It came from the woman seated just to his left, on a smaller throne that still managed to look like it was trying to be bigger than his. Queen Mother Ottavia. Her silver hair caught the torchlight and threw it back sharp, like a blade catching the sun. Her mouth curved up at the corners in something that was supposed to look like a smile, but there wasn't a drop of warmth in it. It was the look of a woman, watching something she'd wanted to happen for a long, long time, finally happen. Valentina's legs shook as she stood. She forced one foot in front of the other. Her own footsteps echoed too loud against the stone, like a clock ticking down to something she couldn't stop. She could still feel the bond. That thread between her and Dario that had once been so warm and so steady, the thing that used to hum quietly in her chest like a song she always knew the words to. Tonight it flickered, weak, like a candle somebody had left out in the wind. Stop, Ottavia said. Valentina stopped. She stood just below the steps of the throne, close enough to see the muscle ticking in Dario's jaw, far enough to feel every mile of distance he had put between them without moving an inch. He still hadn't looked at her, not once. Her hands were shaking at her sides. She pressed them flat against her skirt to make them stop, and they didn't stop. Your Majesty. The court healer stepped forward and bowed low, his voice careful in a way that made her stomach drop before he even said the words. The examination is complete. The whole hall went quiet. Even the torches seemed to hold still. Speak, Dario said. His voice came out flat, cold, like something poured out of him instead of something that came from him. The healer hesitated, just a breath too long. You were given an order, Ottavia said, smooth as oil. Wait, Valentina's own voice cracked through the silence before she could stop it. There has to be a mistake. There is no mistake, Ottavia said. The healer closed his eyes. She cannot bear children. The words hit the room like a stone dropped into still water. Gasps, whispers running fast from person to person. A Luna who can't give the kingdom an heir. Unacceptable, someone muttered. Valentina heard it even though she wished she hadn't. That's not true, she whispered, shaking her head. That can't be true. It is enough. Dario's voice cut through everything, and the room went silent again, Instantly, the way a room goes silent for a king. He stood. The air in the hall changed the second he did, heavy and pressing, the way it gets right before a storm breaks. He came down the steps toward her, slow, every step measured like he'd already decided exactly how this would go, and there was no changing his mind now. When he reached her, she could feel the heat coming off him, but she couldn't feel the bond. Not anymore, not from him. Dario, she looked up at him, begging with her whole face. You know me, you feel this, I know you do. I feel nothing. The lie hit her harder than a closed fist would have. You're lying, she said, and her voice broke right down the middle. You have to be. You are weak, he said, like she hadn't spoken at all. And now you are useless to me. Something inside her chest cracked, not all at once. Slow, like ice giving way under your feet. Please, tears blurred everything in front of her. Don't do this, I am your mate, I belong beside you. You were. And there it was, 3 words and the whole world tilted sideways. I, Alpha King Dario Sant'Angelo, reject you, Valentina Conti, as my mate and as my Luna. Something inside her tore loose. The pain came fast and ugly, like her chest had been hollowed out with a spoon. She heard herself scream before she even knew she was going to. Her knees gave out and the stone floor came up to meet her, hard and cold, and the bond that had once felt like the warmest thing in her whole life snapped into nothing. Nobody moved to help her. Nobody dared. Through the haze of it, she saw him standing over her, untouched, like she had never mattered to him at all. Dario, she choked out, reaching for him with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. He stepped back, out of her reach. Take her away, he said, cold, final. Get her out of my sight. Rough hands grabbed her arms and pulled her up off the floor, dragging her toward the doors. Her feet barely worked. Her mind was somewhere far away, still kneeling on that stone floor, still waiting for him to change his mind. This couldn't be how it ended. Not over a lie, not over something that wasn't even true. I'm not Barren, she whispered, so quiet that nobody heard her. I'm not. The big doors of the hall groaned open, and the cold night air rushed in like it had been waiting outside the whole time. The guards dragged her down the stone steps and out past the torches, past the last lit path, into the dark where no wolf went if they could help it. Please, she said, her voice barely a breath now. I have nowhere else. Not our problem, one of the guards muttered and kept walking. They crossed a line in the trees where the air itself seemed to change, colder all at once, heavier, like the forest knew something the wolves didn't. The borderland. The place every child in the kingdom grew up being warned about. Don't go past the old trees. Don't go where the wolves don't patrol. No, she whispered, shaking her head. Not here. Perfect place for something nobody wants, the guard said, and shoved her forward. She hit the ground hard, the air knocked clean out of her. Above her, the trees stood twisted and ancient, their branches reaching up like fingers, the bark catching moonlight in a way that didn't look natural. This wasn't wolf land. This wasn't even close to it. The guards didn't linger. Their footsteps faded fast into the dark, like even they were afraid to stay. And then she was alone. Valentina curled into herself on the cold ground, her whole body shaking, tears running down into the dirt beneath her cheek. She dug her fingers into the earth like she could hold onto something, anything, to keep from falling any further than she already had. I didn't lie, she whispered to the empty trees. I didn't lie. Her voice broke apart on the last word and turned into something that wasn't words at all anymore, just sound, just grief. The wind moved through the branches above her, slow, deliberate, like it had been waiting for her to stop crying long enough to listen. Then she heard it, a voice, low and smooth, coming from somewhere in the dark where there shouldn't have been anyone at all. Such a waste, it said, to throw away something so valuable. Valentina's whole body went still. Who's there? She breathed. A shape stepped out from between the trees, and the moonlight caught the edge of him first, silver hair, eyes that held a kind of light that didn't belong to anything human or anything wolf. He moved like the forest had grown him there on purpose and was only now letting him step free. "Tell me, little wolf," he said, crouching down so she could see his face, see eyes that looked like they'd been waiting a long, long time for this exact moment. "What will you give me if I give you everything they denied you?" 3 months had passed since the night Marcello first knelt beside her in the dirt, and Valentina barely recognized her own hands anymore. She stood in the small stone courtyard behind Marcello's hall, palms turned up to the morning light, watching threads of silver fire curl between her fingers like smoke that knew exactly where it wanted to go. A few weeks back, that same light would have knocked her flat on her back, left her gasping on the ground for an hour. Now it just felt like breathing, like something that had always belonged to her, finally let out of a locked room. She pressed a hand to her stomach without thinking about it. She'd been doing that a lot lately. There was a warmth there now, low and steady, that hadn't been there before the seal broke. Marcello hadn't said the word yet. Neither had she, but she knew. A mother always knows before anyone tells her. "You're getting stronger," Marcello said from the doorway, and the way he said it, quiet, almost reverent, told her he felt it too. "Faster than I thought I would," she admitted. "Some mornings I wake up and I don't feel like the same woman who knelt on that floor." "You aren't," he said. "You never were her, you just didn't know it yet." She wanted to believe that. Most days, she almost did. It happened on a morning that started ordinary. Birds in the trees, bread baking somewhere inside the hall, the smell of it drifting out into the courtyard, warm and plain and good. Valentina was practicing, small things, lifting a fallen leaf into the air and holding it there when the wind changed. Not natural wind. She learned the difference by now. This wind carried something cold underneath it, something that made the hair on her arms stand straight up. "Get inside," Marcello said, and his voice had gone hard in a way she'd never heard from him. She didn't make it 3 steps before they came out of the trees. 4 of them, fey like Marcello but wrong somehow, their eyes flat and hungry in a way his never were. The one in front, a woman with hair like spun frost, looked at Valentina the way you'd look at something you intended to take home and keep in a cage. "The old line doesn't belong to him," the woman said. "It belongs to the court, to all of us. He has no right to keep her or what she carries locked up here for himself." "She isn't a thing to be divided up," Marcello said, stepping in front of Valentina, his whole body coiled tight. "She is mine to protect, and I will not ask you twice to leave." They didn't leave. What happened next came fast and ugly, the kind of fight that doesn't give you time to be scared until it's already over. Marcello moved like the forest itself was fighting alongside him, vines tearing up out of the ground, shadows answering his call. But there were 4 of them and 1 of him, and Valentina watched in horror as one of the attackers got past his guard and drove something sharp into his side. He staggered. Blood, dark and wrong-colored, soaked through his shirt. "No," Valentina breathed. Something inside her broke open. She didn't decide to do it. There wasn't time to decide anything. The light that had been curling polite and small between her fingers for weeks came roaring up out of her chest like a flood, breaking a dam, silver and gold both at once, wolf and fey together, and it slammed into the woman with frost-colored hair before she could land another blow. The attacker went down hard and didn't get back up. The other 3 scattered into the trees like smoke, gone. Valentina dropped to her knees beside Marcello, hands shaking as she pressed them against the wound at his side. Stay with me, do you hear me?" "I hear you," he said, breathless, and there was something almost like a smile on his face even through the pain. "You did that." "I didn't have a choice." "No," he agreed softly. "You didn't. That's how I know it was real." She got him inside, got the bleeding stopped, sat with him through the night with her hand wrapped around his and her heart hammering every time his breathing caught. By morning, he was weak but alive, and she allowed herself 1 quiet hour of relief before the next storm rolled in. It came in the form of wolves at the tree line. A dozen of them, and at the front, a face she'd hoped never to see again. Dario. He came alone into the courtyard, hands open, no weapon drawn. Looking nothing like the king who'd thrown her away on a stone floor. He looked tired. He looked like a man who hadn't slept right in 3 months. "I know what I did," he said before she could speak. I know there's no fixing it with words, but I have to say it anyway. I knew, Valentina. I knew about the seal. Your grandmother came to me years ago, begged me to keep it hidden, said if the wrong people found out what was sleeping inside you before it was time, they'd kill you to stop it. I thought if I rejected you in front of everyone, loud enough, cruel enough, it would break the seal fast and send you somewhere safe before anyone else figured it out. His voice cracked. I was wrong about how to do it. I was wrong to let you believe even for 1 second that you weren't enough. That's the only thing I've been sure of since that night. Valentina stood very still, feeling the weight of every person watching her, just like that night in the Great Hall. Except this time, her knees didn't shake. You don't get to decide what protects me, she said. Not you, not him. She glanced back at Marcello, leaning weak but upright in the doorway, and something passed between them that didn't need words. Not anymore. She turned to face them both, the king who'd cast her aside and the prince who'd claimed her in the dark, and felt the power settle warm and certain under her skin, hers, fully hers now, nobody else's to give or take away. I am not a seal to be broken or a crown to be fought over, she said, her voice carrying clean across the courtyard. Whatever throne rises from what I carry, it answers to me first. Neither man argued. For the first time since the night they took everything from her, nobody in that courtyard moved to stop her. She placed a hand over the warmth low in her stomach and looked out at the two kingdoms standing quiet before her, finally seeing her exactly as she was.